Please give it up for Jessica Bauer.
I decided to hike the John Muir Trail, which is a 200-mile trek through the rugged Sierra Nevada mountains. When I tell my mom this plan, that a girlfriend and I are going to spend over 3 weeks in the wilderness with no cell service, she says, "Can't you just go to Italy?" She didn't understand why I wanted to do something so difficult and far from help. But really, she only worried because she wanted me to be safe. But her mother, my grandma Marilyn, was not the type of woman who ever played it safe. She once famously followed a cute man into an elevator, and when she overheard him talking about going sailing that weekend, invited herself along, even though she had never been on a boat before in her life. And it must not have been too disastrous because that man became my grandfather. I knew that she would understand this desire for me to do something wild and free, and I couldn't wait to tell her. But not long after, she was hospitalized with what we thought was something minor. I called my mom and asked if I should come, but she assured me that Marilyn would be home that weekend. And she put her on the phone so that I could say hi. And she told me, "I love you so much, kiddo." She always called me kiddo. She sounded chipper, just like her normal self, but what I didn't realize is that that was her way of saying goodbye, because she ended up passing away that same night. A few weeks later, I went to Phoenix for her celebration of life, and I fought through tears reading her eulogy. And then I led our family in a toast to our beloved Marilyn. And just as we all go to raise our glasses, a huge burst of wind tears through the patio, and it knocks over tables, and it sends all of our wine glasses flying. And we all just laugh because, of course, Marilyn would not miss her own party. A few months later, I'm in the throes of planning my trip, and I asked my mom if I could bring a piece of Marilyn with me. My mom, who still thought that it wasn't too late for me to book a hotel in Tuscany, agreed without hesitation. She spent $80 to overnight a box of her mother to a remote ferry landing that she couldn't even locate on a map. She may not have understood the hike, but she definitely understood the assignment. She sent the package to a remote ranch that we would reach about halfway along our journey. And it was so deep in the backcountry that mail arrives there via pack mule, off-road vehicle, and sheer determination, which is coincidentally how I also arrived. And by the time that I roll through, I am exhausted. We had been hiking for over 2 weeks. My feet hurt so badly that even my blisters had their own blisters. Then we learned that over half of our resupply had gone bad in the heat, and we'd barely have enough to get us through the next stretch of the hike. And if that weren't enough, then came the final blow. They couldn't find my mom's package. I was devastated because not only would I not be able to bring Marilyn on this adventure with me, but this place was so far off the grid, I was worried that we just wouldn't get her ashes back at all. And it really felt like I had lost her all over again. And I thought about giving up. I started wondering, why was I doing something so difficult and far from help? Willingly. And I could hear my mom's voice in the back of my head saying, "You could be eating gelato right now." Which honestly didn't sound so bad at this point. But then I heard my grandma's voice right after hers saying, "Keep going, kiddo." That night, even though I was in a bed for the first time in weeks, I still couldn't sleep. And I realized that I wasn't just out there for me. I was out there because of the women who raised me. And when I finally drifted off, I had the most vivid dream. Marilyn was there, and this is the only time she's ever come to me in my sleep. She wrapped me in a huge hug and said in her unmistakable voice, "I am so proud of you, kiddo." The next morning, when I went to breakfast, we sat at a table next to a little old lady with short, curly white hair who looked almost exactly like Marilyn. And she was obviously holding court at the table, regaling us all with stories from her life. And between the dream and her doppelganger, I could feel Marilyn's presence there with me. And even though they told me that they didn't have my package, I refused to believe it. So before we got back on the trail, we swung by the mailroom one last time. It was early and no one was in. And even though I knew I wasn't supposed to be there, I channeled some of that determination that Marilyn had when she followed my grandfather onto that boat, and I waltzed right by the staff-only sign. And almost immediately, I saw my name. I couldn't believe it. But then I realized, of course, Marilyn would not miss this adventure. So I picked her up, and I put her in my pack, and I kept going. And I walked, and for the next 100 miles, men that we would meet along the trail would say things like, "That pack is bigger than you are," which, fair. But then they would follow up with things like, "What you got in there? A hair straightener?" Right? Which is so offensive because not only did half of our food spoil and not even make it into the pack, but I'm literally carrying 3 generations of women on my back. But sure, let's throw in a curling iron, because why not? So I kept walking past stunning alpine lakes and through wide open meadows and under towering granite cliffs. And everywhere I went, I couldn't help but think, this is exactly the kind of place that Marilyn would have loved. But I wasn't ready to let her go. So I kept walking until finally I was almost at the end of the trail. And I knew if this was going to happen, it was now or never. So I picked a spot up on a bluff overlooking a lake, and I pull out my mom's package. And just as I go to spread my grandma's ashes, the wind completely stops. And instead of drifting cinematically into the air, my grandmother's ashes fly straight back into me. They land in my hair and up my nose. I am huffing my grandmother. This is practically elder abuse at this point. And she's on my leggings and on my boots, and then I start crying, and she's mixing with my tears, and it wasn't supposed to be this way. I was so disappointed. And then as I'm frantically trying to get her off of me, I start laughing, and I think, of course this happened. Marilyn didn't want to be a memory at the bottom of a lake. She wanted to finish the damn hike. So I stopped trying. I stopped trying to brush her off, and instead, I took in a deep breath of that fresh mountain air. And yes, a little bit of Marilyn too. And we walked the last miles together.
Keep it going for Jessica.